Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. It's June 11, 2024. It's 6:02. We're going to go ahead and officially call this meeting to order tonight. I'm going to, Commissioner Mason, would you lead us in prayer tonight? If you would, please, sir.
Let us all bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us back to this place one more time. We thank you for all that you've done for this amazing county and all that you're about to do. God, we ask that as we move forward in doing the business of the county, God, that you would go with us, be with us. God, give us clarity in our minds, God. God, give us peace and harmony, God. God, we continue to thank you for your blessings that you bestowed upon us and all of the amazing constituents and residents of this particular county. God, we thank you, we bless you, and we give you all the kingdom, honor, and the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. We are here today for our special call meeting, our budget presentation. Mr. Cooper, we're going to turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, and citizens of Newton County. I come before you today with the proposed budget presentation, which will be presented by our Finance Director, Ms. Brittany White. Before we get started, I want to just talk about some of the things that will be highlighted in this presentation. One, we're going to talk about the non-financial budget revenue categories. And we're going to also talk about the 8 finance expenditure categories and how we as a county are trying to be fiscally responsible. You're going to see in this presentation that our needs are our wants and our wants are our needs. So at this time, I'm going to yield to Ms. White as she present to you all.
Thank you. So we're going to start with our all fund summary, and then we'll dig into the general fund because I know that's what most people are interested in here tonight. So just as a reminder, we do have multiple special revenue funds. We have capital funds, and we have debt service funds, and then we also have enterprise funds within the county. So our total proposed budget for the FY25 year for the county-wide is $133,947,460, which is a 3.1% increase over the FY24 budget year. So we'll dig into the general fund now. Well, this is the all fund summary. So this just shows where our general fund is our 74.3% of our budget, and then our Cornish Creek fund is 8%, solid waste is 6.2%, our fire districts fund is 3%, our E911 fund is 2.5%, the ARPA fund is 2.2%, our grant fund is 2%, impact fee fund is 0.7%, workers' comp is 0.4%, and then the rest of the funds are so small they don't even show up on this graph. So to start with the general fund, our expenditure highlights for the general fund this year, we did have several categories that we had to add to the budget this year that were not included in last year's budget. So the first is a 4.5% COLA for all employees. So that 4.5% COLA came to $2 million. We also had to add an extra $2 million in the budget for our defined benefit plan because last year we started the plan in January, so we only funded half of that. So this year we're adding another $2 million to fund a full year of the defined benefit plan. Our health insurance increased 11% this year, so that 11% came to $1 million. We have also added $2 million into the public works budget for paving. The SPLOST is not fully funding regular paving projects like it has in the past for public works, so we did add an extra $2 million there. We also had to fund an additional ABM debt payment this year. So last year we funded one debt payment for ABM because we no longer have enough funds in the SPLOST to pay the ABM debt. So this year we had to add a second one because we have biannual payments there. So that total came to $7,555,000. All other department operating lines pretty much are held at FY24 numbers. So this graph right here just shows our general fund expenditure totals for the years. So you can see FY22 actuals were $73.5 million. FY23 actuals were $83.3 million. Our FY24 budget was $91.5 million, and our FY25 proposed budget is $99.4 million. So to highlight some of our general fund revenue increases, this budget does support a millage rate at the current millage rate of 8.439. So that was a 9% increase in the tax digest. So that 9% increase in the tax digest did offer right around $4.1 million in additional revenue. We also budgeted an increase in our loss collections, which is the local option sales tax, of $802,961. We increased the interest income revenue line by $1.3 million. So that interest income does come from the investments that we have in our fund balance. And then we also had an increase in the insurance premium tax of $600,000. So this graph shows our general fund revenue totals for the years FY22. The actuals were $85.3 million. For FY23, the actuals were $89.9 million. For the budget in FY24, $91.5 million. And then the revenues for the FY25 proposed are $99.4 million. So this just highlights our general fund revenues by categories. So our taxes is by far the biggest category, which is $84.7 million. We also have revenues that come from licenses and permits at $1.4 million. Our intergovernmental revenues at $1.6 million. Our charges for services is $5.6 million. Fines and forfeitures is $929,000. Our investment income is $2.5 million. Our contributions and donations is $6,000. And our miscellaneous revenue is $706,000, and their other financing sources is $1.7 million. And this is just a graph that shows our general fund revenues by category. So general government brings in 90.5% of our revenues. Public safety brings in 3.6% of our revenue. The judicial system brings in 2.2%. Housing and development, which is development services department, brings in 1.7%, and public works brings in 1.1%. So our general fund expenditures by category, our largest expenditure is obviously personnel. So our personnel makes up 66.5 million of our budget. Our purchasing and contracted services is the next largest, which is 17.5 million. Supplies is 10.1 million. There is no capital outlay in the budget this year, so that is zero. Our interfund and departmental charges is a negative $295,000. Our other cost is $2.2 million. Debt service is $1.1 million, and our other financing uses is $2.1 million. So this is just the breakdown of a graph of the numbers that I just went over in the slide before this. And our general fund expenditures by function, so public safety is our largest expenditure at 52%. Our general government is the next largest at 7.8%, followed by the judicial system, which is 9.5%. Public works is 8.8%. Other financing uses is 4.1%. Recreation is 3%. Housing and development is 2.2%. Health and welfare is 1.5%, and debt service is 1.1%. And this is the breakdown of our general fund by department. So overall, the budget for this year is $7.8 million over what last year was. And as we talked about earlier, the numbers we talked about in the first slide was $7,555,000. So that's where a majority of the increase comes from, which is a 9% increase over last year. And this is just a graph that shows our 10-year millage rate history and the levy of the taxes by the millage rate. So you can see from 2015 to current. And like I said, this budget does hold steady at an 8.439 millage rate. So the next steps after this budget meeting will be a public hearing that will be held on June 18th at 6:30, and then a special called meeting on June 25th at 6 o'clock for the budget adoption. And that is the end of the presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Brittany and Ms. Cooper. Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Sanders?
Thank you so much. I have a couple of, probably like 4 questions. The first question I have, the residents have been really contacting us about, well, me, about the increase in the hang tags through solid waste, which is 100, went from like 130 or 150 last year to 180. So with that being increased and they're receiving more revenue, has there been a decrease in the amount that we're giving to solid waste? And that question was asked by residents.
So just as a reminder, the only amount of money the general fund transfers to solid waste is the amount that is equivalent to the debt service piece that was tied back to the land settlement. This year is $648,000, which ties back to the piece of the $10 million settlement.
And what is the remaining of the settlement?
Let me get that pulled up. If you want to go ahead and ask your
Okay.
next question, I can.
So the second question is the ABM debt. There has been discussion since I came on board in 2021 about that contract because they have not been doing anything for us and we're constantly paying them. So it kind of went dormant. We never discussed the ABM contract or went back to it because we're paying them $500,000 every year and they're not providing any services to us. So that's taxpayers' dollars going to something that's not even benefiting the county. So I would love to understand from the board, where will we going from that? I know we talked about breach of contract. I don't know if Patrick got back with us on that. That was one of the discussions that were asked. I think Commissioner Cowell may have asked that question about breaching the contract and just moving forward with it. But this is a debt that we're paying and they're not even providing a service to the county, and the taxpayers are paying $550,000 with no services being provided to us. That's taxpayers' dollars. So I would love to know, maybe Patrick can answer us where we are with this and why we're still paying them $500,000 and they're not providing a service to us. I don't know who can answer that question.
I'll kind of speak just on the debt service piece since I think it was originally a contract and then we rolled it into a bank loan. So that would be my concern is obviously we want to fund that because we don't want to stop paying our debt service just like you wouldn't want to stop paying your car payment or your mortgage. So that's why it is continuously built into the budget. Yeah. But as far as the contract piece and being dissatisfied with the services, I think that would be a board decision. Well,
and I get what you're saying about please don't think this is being sarcastic because you made the example. The difference between a car payment and the mortgage, you're actually living in the house and you actually have the car. We don't have a service. They're not providing any service to us. So we're paying this amount and they're supposed to be fixing certain things, doing certain things, and nothing. We're getting nothing. We're paying $500,000 for nothing. So, and that's what was told to me when I came on this board, and that was a huge discussion. So maybe that Patrick legally can tell us, or how can we, as the county and legal, go to them and possibly sue them for not providing a service to the county.
Yeah, so it's been a little while since I looked at that, but the short version of it is, and Brittany's right, we converted that service contract into a lease, basically a lease purchase is how it was drawn up. So our debt service is that we pay, and I don't know that we classified as debt service, but it really is debt service. We owe the money to our lender. Now, is there a claim that could be brought directly against ABM? As I sit here right now, we did look into that. I don't recall as I'm sitting here what the answer was, but the debt contract is one that we are, for lack of a better word, stuck with. So I'll certainly pull that back up and I'll get a report to you before the next.
Okay. So my question in regards to that. So with us paying this, we are paying this because they were providing a service to us. Assurance companies will be providing a service. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Patrick, can you explain that the service has already been provided?
Yeah, I mean,
we're paying for it now.
Their service was upfront, and we're now paying for the results of that.
What was the
is
service?
what it was.
What was the service they provided?
It was upgrading the whole, I mean, it was a massive number of upgrades. I couldn't list them for you if I had to, but,
I think the main was HVAC and the
Yeah.
lighting.
Oh,
now,
'cause I remember.
were there issues with those? I'm sure
Yeah,
we are having issues
That's
with
why I'm
those.
bringing it up, because I know
So,
there
but
were.
the way we are, the ABM allocation on your budget
Okay,
is paying for the end product that we receive. We are basically, we converted that into a lease purchase, which is the way we borrow money if we don't do a geo debt. So, is there a claim that could be brought? We looked at that, and the fact that we haven't taken action on it would tell me that my opinion on that was probably not, but we'll look back at it and see, and I'll get you a better answer.
okay. Thank you so much. And were there any new positions proposed from various departments, and what were they?
There were positions requested, but there are no new positions
In this
proposed budget.
Okay, thank you.
And
That's all.
I've pulled up the solid waste question that you asked for how much. So the general fund is obligated to pay the solid waste debt for the settlement up through FY27, and it's roughly right around $645,000 a year.
27. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brittany, when we're talking about the debt charges, I can't remember. Is that debt that we owe, is that supposed to be decreasing over time, or are we adding to that debt so it's gonna remain kind of leveled out or the same?
When you say debt, do you mean
It was-
the?
It said debt charges.
You're talking about the debt service rate?
Interfund debt charges.
Okay. Oh, that
Can you
is
explain that for me?
interfund department charges. So that is actually
Okay.
a credit, because that is, in the accounting world, there are reimbursement line items that are expenses, but they show as negatives. So that's basically where other departments pay us back for items that the general fund, the services the general fund offers other departments
Okay.
and funds as well.
Okay. Reading is fundamental. I thought I heard you say debt charges, but that's department charges. So that's why I want you to go back. And then my second question is, with our millage rate remaining the same, I know there has been issues in the past where whenever we don't take a full rollback, we have to market it as if we are increasing taxes, which, by the way, that's one of the things that we're currently working on through the Revenue and Finance Committee, through the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, to kind of help be able to address that concern, because a lot of times it is a misconception that it's increasing taxes. So is there going to be a way, since we're keeping it the same and we're not taking a rollback, is there a way that we're going to be able to kind of show and explain where it's not an increase in taxes, even though we may have to? Does that make sense? My
Wait.
question.
There,
Because we're not taking a rollback, correct?
yeah, and the state does define the rollback as, a certain, you're not levying taxes minus the exemption. I mean, there's like a whole complicated formula
It
and
is.
definition that I can't think
Right.
of off the top of my head
So-
right now.
Right.
Commissioner
But-
Mason, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The best way to combat that is just public information.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what the state requires you to do is, if the same millage rate generates more tax revenue, you have to advertise it as a tax increase.
Correct.
Now, what that means is it's a global taxing. It's like a
Right.
macro as opposed to a micro.
Right.
So, you get new growth, and because of all of the various millage rate freezes you have, for the most part, individual taxes don't change. You're not increasing in individual taxes. What you're doing is you've got new revenue generated by new growth and by general increase in value of properties across the county. The state makes you advertise that as a tax increase. So it's really a matter of public messaging. You just want to make sure. Now, the ad we are required by law to run doesn't say that,
Right.
right? But that's because the state makes us run that ad.
Correct.
And it's just going to be a matter of getting word out.
Okay. And that's why I wanted to kind of put that out there now, so that we can kind of get ahead of that messaging, because I know that could potentially be something that could potentially haunt the board, because of how it has to be advertised. And so I wanted to kind of make sure that we got out in front of that message versus being reactive to that particular message. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to give Commissioner Sanders a little more history on ABM, the ABM contract was before my time, but and I believe ill-advised, but the horse was already out of the barn at that point. So it was a build-out upgrade. There was some green upgrades. There were some HVAC upgrades at the Judicial Center, and some. I believe most of the project was at the Sheriff's Department, if I remember correctly. So it turned out, as it turns out, it was just, in my opinion, not a very good transaction, to be honest with you. So, and we've seen some of the actions we've taken since then to try to recoup some of that money. But that's just to give you a little more history. It wasn't a service per se. It was actually some, I guess you could almost call it capital build out. So, but we're now still having to pay for down the road, like a car. So, but the budget in general, I think it's going to be important that we highlight to our citizens the overages as relative to last year. And those overages total $7.55 million according to Brittany's PowerPoint here. So we have to make sure that our citizens understand that. Now, I'm not going to jump into the millage rate right now, but I can tell you that our citizens, between the increase in their property values and the increase in what they're paying in and I know firsthand of this, right, the insurance premiums. There are many now that have an insurance and tax payment combined that's more than their home loans, their home note. And I've seen that quite a bit in my business. So I've gotten an especially high number of phone calls this year, which I tried to offset it with some Facebook communications in terms of, hey, your property assessments or property or tax estimate goes out with the current millage rate. We don't know what your taxes will be yet because we have not set the millage rate, and we still have not. So that'll come later. But I believe, and I won't go any further than this, I believe we've got to give some relief to our taxpayers. I believe we've got to give some relief to our taxpayers, and I'm not sure how we do that yet. I've got some ideas, but starting with this $7.55 million highlighted here, I believe is a place to start. Now, I'll be the first to say that non-recurring expenses have to be. Our recurring expenses have to be planned out accordingly, right? So you can't take a flash payment in many cases to take care of those. And I'll stop right there for now. But I'm Mr. County Manager, Mr. Cooper. I'm concerned about not, and you've heard me. I've told you this in person, so you're not hearing anything new. I believe we've got to find something to do with that $7.55 million other than pass that along to the taxpayers this year. So I want us to work on that, and I'll get with you if you want me to and discuss some ideas. But that's where I am right now, and Brittany knows that too. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. C. I just wanted to share a little information since I had been here for a while, and especially during the ABM contract. There was a time when the over at the Office of Sheriff Detention Center, the air conditioner had went out, and you know there was no monies in order to fund it, and so we would test with trying to find particular funding, and this when ABM came in and said that they was going to do some upgrades, and that the upgrades they do would save us the same amount of money that we were spending by us not having to spend it because the utility rates or whatever would go down. And from I think the initial thing, stuff did go down, but I think the next year stuff went back up. So we hired a consultant. I think if my memory serves me right, Patrick, and he came and said, "You hire me, I'm gonna go and make sure that that the rates went down and we didn't have to pay them." And they found some savings and went back and they saved some money. Am I talking on the right line, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, y'all hired a sort of an energy use consultant that did an energy audit for the whole county.
Yes. So we saved. There was a saving in doing that. And I think the last time we discussed about ABM, I think we did test Patrick with go and find out whether or not we could just cancel whatever we got or do whatever and bring us back an idea, which I don't think we never got. And so that's kind of where we are at today from the best of my memory. The next thing I want to talk about taxes and about this saying, roll over, roll back, and it sounds good. And they said, well, we're going to explain to them that they're saving money better that way. But people understand when you get your tax bill, and it's higher this year than it was last year. It was higher last year than it was before. And then we said, well, we just roll it back. It's the same. People don't buy that. They have to see it on their tax bills. And so, and I think until we just able to somehow or another roll it back and show them on their tax bill where it's actually going down instead of going up, I think that's when they'll be feel a little bit better about their taxes. Thank you, Mr. C.
Thank you, sir. You had anything, Commissioner Cowell? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, as far as ABM goes, and I've said this from day one, I think we need to breach that contract, and Patrick, get Gerard and Davis to handle that for us. Most things, when you get into court, they settle, and we can get rid of it, and you know that. I think it's been a ripoff from day one. But I wasn't here to vote on it. That was prior board put that in. Now, I understand the logic of why they did that, because at the time, the county didn't have two nickels to rub together. It was broke. And so they were looking at every possible way to come up with some money to try to fix some of these projects and some of these things that had to be fixed on some of our buildings and stuff. But since then, I don't like ABM at all. The only thing I saw them do was change some light bulbs. And they said they worked on air conditioning and changed roofs. I didn't see any of that. But that being said, that's just how I feel about that. As far as where we are with the increase of $7,555,000, it's based on, you got your digest and everything. You got a digest increase of about 9%. The only way I know to effectively change that is to adjust the millage rate. Now, the millage rate now is on this budget is holding the same. I think it needs to be lowered. That's the only way I know to give some tax relief back to the people in Newton County. That, I think, is the most effective way to do it, is change the millage rate. So that's my thoughts on it. I think we've actually finally got most of our vacant positions filled. I'm not sure how many the sheriff has left, but a lot of that we've actually been able to fill our deputy status and, of course, our firefighter status. We're in better shape, I think, now on personnel than we were last couple of years. Anyway, those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last thing I forgot to mention. Brittany said the increase in our budget is 3%, and that does not keep pace with inflation year over, as best I can tell.
Yeah, the 3% is the total countywide budget, and then the general fund was around 8.9, I think, 8.6.
But our overall budget was 3%.
Yes.
Okay, so and that's attributed to some of the 7.55 million I spoke of earlier, or Brittany brought to our attention earlier. But I think it's important. I know that our department heads have held the line. They have absolutely held the line. And what you see in our increase are things that are just come and due, or things that we have done to enhance employment, recruitment, and retention. Our insurance increases. But I think, while I'm the one screaming lower the millage rate all the time, that we have to keep in mind that the cost of a government doing business has increased. The cost of a business doing business has increased. So we just have to find that balance and look for ways to help out the taxpayer. I can tell you my tax bill, if we hold the millage rate where it is now, will go up much more than 3%. That's the dilemma that we have to talk to our constituents about. That's the scenario we face day in and day out, through email, through text messages, and through phone calls and social media. So all those things in mind. But I just wanted to point out, Mr. Cooper, that your department heads, I know, have held the line, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Sanders.
Thank you. I was talking to the tax assessors and also others in other counties. And I know we don't like to look at other counties, but I know, and I don't know if county manager, this would be you or working with the tax assessor's office, there was a mention of Walton County and how they actually froze some of their homestead and stuff and so forth to roll back the taxes. And I think Fulton and DeKalb also did it as well. So if we can look at those counties who have done those various things in regards to the taxes, to not make it an increase on their property tax, there's different things that we could do. So Walton is kind of like around the size that we are. I know with Fulton County being a little bit larger, they can do those certain things that we can't. We don't have the population to do what they do. But if we could look at those smaller counties that are near us, that have done those various things to help with the property taxes, that would definitely help us as well. I mean, if they got it right, why don't we just look at what they're doing? Thank you.
Thank you all for your feedback. Just to talk about inflation rates, I think it's important that we know in 2023, the inflation rate was on an average at about 4.1%. I think it flattened out at about 3.4%. So to speak to your point, the 3.1% increase, again, our needs are our wants and our wants are our needs.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anyone else? Turn it back over to you, sir, for the next steps.
So our next steps will be the June 18th public hearing at 6:30 p.m. And then from there, we'll matriculate to the June 25th budget adoption.
Anyone else? Commissioner Cowan.
Harold, are you going to make any changes you and Brittany gonna make any changes to the budget based on what we've discussed tonight?
We're going to do a comprehensive review and take in consideration what all of you all's concerns are. And if there are any changes made, you all will definitely receive notification and have ample time to review it.
Okay, so we may get a revised copy on June 18th, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, this time we're going to allow citizens' comments. You have 3 minutes to do so. You may come up now and state your name and address for the record, please. Citizen comments. Thank you. That portion of our board meeting is closed. So I'm gonna seek a motion that we adjourn. There's a motion by Commissioner Edwards and second by Commissioner Mason. Any discussion? All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you.